All right, welcome to episode 22 of the Wild Farm Family Fun Show. Everything on this show, we talk about farm, family, food, and most importantly, fun. We always end the show with fun in the kitchen with Chef Nick. He's usually got a dish prepared and a recipe to have you take home, not only to your family, but this show is very kid-friendly because we love the concept of teaching your kids in the kitchen and how to prep food. And so all that fun, but also we have amazing guests that we bring on here from all walks of life to share what they're doing in the world. And so hopefully you can gain some value. And today is absolutely no different. We have a special guest today, Dr. Stephen Cabral. We're going to go ahead and bring him up. Dr. Cabral.
Hey guys, it's great to be here. Appreciate you having me on the show, Nick and Troy. My connection seems to be a little bit choppy, so just let me know if it ends up breaking up.
Excellent. No, you sound good on my end. So we always like to start with a little fun segment that Nick's going to kind of lead you through.
Sounds great.
All right, Dr. Cabral, thank you so much for joining Troy and I and just being willing to share your experience and knowledge and truth with the world. So to kick things off, you're a functional medicine practitioner or doctor specializing in kind of an Ayurvedic emphasis. So where are you calling from, first off? And then what is a fun fact that you can kick us off with here this afternoon?
Yeah, so I'm actually splitting my time, believe it or not, between Boston, Maine, and then in the South. And the reason is that during this pandemic, we've really just tried to make the most of it. We have two young daughters, 6 and 8 years old, and we're trying to just enable them to have the mindset that this can be a little bit more of an adventure while they're doing virtual school, rather than this is something to be feared, and that they grow up with a childhood of basically anxiety and fear. So we're doing our best, just like every parent out there, to make it as fun as possible. And so I'll be back. We'll be back in Maine in another 2 months or so, and we'll see where life takes us from there. So that's where I'm based out of, 3 different offices, kind of satellite offices. Luckily, our practice is virtual, so we see people all over the world. I don't know if that's my fun fact or not, but we basically work with people all over the world through the power of this medium right here of video, and it's been a lot of fun, basically developing practices for the last 20 years, and everything from large wellness functional medicine practices to seeing over 250,000 people, and then eventually seeing people globally around the world.
Wow. That is definitely fun and very impressive, and that's awesome. Really enjoyed, how you have helped your family with a mindset and making this whole thing an adventure. That is really awesome, and thank you again for being on the show. And we'll turn it back over to Troy with a couple more questions to keep us going.
Yeah, so backstage, we had a chance to mention, I was talking to Dr. Cabral, how his book and his practices have actually helped change our family's life. And so I just wanted to show his book on camera here, The Rain Barrel Effect. But, in regards to this book, can you kind of walk us through your journey of how you got into practicing functional medicine, Ayurvedic medicine? Because I find it fascinating, plus all the stuff that we're going to uncover all on the line there.
Yeah, absolutely. So like a lot of natural health practitioners, and my degree is a doctor of naturopathy, but like a lot of chiropractors or maybe registered dietitians or osteopathic doctors or people in the field, acupuncturists, you get into it because oftentimes something went wrong in your own life in terms of health, or maybe your parents or family. And so for me, from the ages of 17 through 27, I was dealing with Addison's disease, type 2 diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, mast cell activation syndrome, POTS, a lot of issues where my immune system was malfunctioning. And conventional medicine had no idea how to help me, except, of course, they had pharmaceuticals they could give me to try to palliate some of the symptoms. Well, from around 20 years old or so until 27, when I met my mentor around 26, 27, I was looking to other natural health-based modalities. And finally, my mentor kind of pulled everything together, and she's a doctor of naturopathy. So of course, I'm trying to follow in her footsteps. She introduced me to Ayurveda. She was one of Dr. Vasant Lad's pupils, and she actually wrote his textbooks for him. And then I ended up doing my internships overseas in India and Sri Lanka, China, Europe, and then all around the US. And I did that because I was the biggest skeptic out there. I mean, it took me 10 years to figure all this out, and everybody had all their different answers. And the truth was this, is that everyone was right in their own way, but most programs and protocols are only bits and pieces of the whole. And so they all work, and if your bits and pieces to get better was the only thing that you were missing, well, then you get well with them. But what we need to look at in terms of health is actually bringing together an integrative approach. And that's allowing people to get well through multiple practices. And that's what we try to teach today. And the way the rain barrel came about is that in the US and in our Western-based philosophy, we have a mindset of always adding more. So we need more superfoods and more of everything in order to get well. But the way that I got well, and the way that a lot of people get well, is yes, you need specific nutrients, but a lot of times it's a subtractive process. You have to empty your rain barrel before you can add more in order to get well.
Yes, beautiful. And so with that, that's a good segue here. And so there's so much to cover in your book. And so what's amazing is like, my wife and I first discovered Naturopath about 8 years ago when we were about to have our first son. And so we met, it was through a Bradley program. So we could actually learn how to be good parents through the birthing process. But she was also a naturopath doctor. And that's kind of where we started down this journey of learning about environment, learning about our water source and everything like that. And so you talk a lot about that in your book, which is household products that you should be considered or aware of, kitchenware and things within the kitchen you should be mindful of, and then various toxins in the home. And so can you kind of share a little bit about in those areas that might help our audience to be aware of those things?
Yeah, a lot of people look at them as almost like extraneous. It's like, oh, it's one more thing to do. I already have to watch out for all the different pesticides on my food. But the truth is this, is that there are a lot of things that are extraneous because they don't make a huge difference. But when it comes to your food and when it comes to your water, that's extremely important. And I would consider your cooking utensils and what you use as part of that, because that can go into your body. And the reason why all this is important in the first place is that there are a lot of heavy metals in your water, as well as, I would say, cooking-based products that we can chat about that people have to be aware of. Because when you end up filling up your rain barrel with heavy metals, such as aluminum and mercury and cadmium and lead and fluoride and chlorine, all of these things affect the downhill stream of your hormones and your nervous system, as well as your liver. So there's 100,000 man-made chemicals right now in the environment. There's actually more than that, according to the World Health Organization. And 50% of those cause cancer. And we keep wondering why cancer rates continue to skyrocket. And by the year 2030, 1 out of 2 people will have cancer. It's like, it's not a mystery. When they want to study cancer, they actually inject lab rats with a specific pesticide that causes cancer. And we keep scratching our heads as to say, well, why is there so much cancer? Well, I mean, we have so many toxins in the environment that they build up in the body. And yes, our liver detoxes a great amount of them, but they still end up building up. They get stored in our fat, and they get stored in our brain because our brain is predominantly fat. So what I say is that we need to look at our food first. So we're trying to basically buy the clean 15 conventional if needed, and the dirty dozen we either don't eat or we buy organic. And in terms of water, we're using a good quality water filter, not just kind of one of the countertop ones, but like a good Berkey filter or something like that. And then we're not doing aluminum foil, or if you use aluminum foil, put a non-bleached parchment paper or something over it first. For your shower and your bath for your kids, use a shower filter, use a bath filter. Honestly, they're like $30. They're not super expensive. You don't have to change the filter for every 6 months. So those are worthwhile investments, I see, that over time, like nothing affects you just that one day, but over time it pays dividends.
Yeah, and it's something in there you covered, which is the liver. Like some people might know that the liver kind of goes through the toxin process for you, but when you have so many toxins coming at you on a daily basis, your liver can't support all of that or get rid of all of that. Is that kind of what you're talking about there?
100%, and this is backed again by clinical science. Not only has this has been published in almost every major journal. We study this. Anybody going to become a medical doctor, naturopathic doctor, an osteopathic doctor, you take toxicology, and these chemicals are obviously have already been studied. They're in the environment. There are 2,000 to 3,000 more chemicals every single year created, certain types of plastics and polymers, et cetera, that are put into the environment. But for the average female, 168 chemicals she's exposed to on a typical daily basis. just from shampoos and conditioners, cosmetics, water, cooking materials, cleaning products, etc. And those can be easily avoided. But it's also, these are the things that build up over time that create the Hashimoto's, the thyroid issues, the MS, the nervous system. It's not the only thing. I mean, you're genetically predisposed, but it's these toxins that create the inflammation that end up then putting you over the edge. So yeah, they're absolutely very, very dangerous. And again, they can be backed up. Anybody can take an environmental toxicity test, which is a simple urine test that measures the output of toxins from your body. And it's very simple for anybody to see, or a heavy metal test, which is just a couple drops of blood or a couple samples of hair. And you can see if you do have any heavy metals. And, you know, we've yet to find anybody with no aluminum at all. Aluminum is pretty pervasive in the environment. I mean, if you think about it, it's in all of our water for the most part. So it can be pretty scary.
Yeah, and so in your book too, you talk a lot about the houses we live in, meaning like sometimes we can't control that a house was built and it has toxins kind of built into the piping and everything. Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's toxic home syndrome is what they're calling it now. They give a syndrome to basically everything. But essentially it means like if you have a brand new home, you might have insulation that's been blown in. You have all sorts of different paint that contain VOCs, which is called volatile organic compounds. These can also be in drinking water. They're invisible. These are gases essentially. And then when it comes to your pipes, it could be old. They're probably not going to be lead pipes, but there are certainly lead pipes in your city that are leading to your pipes. And a lot of new homes are built with flexible hoses, which is plastic. Some are copper, and copper is not necessarily bad until it becomes too much, and then copper is an issue. I just work with a very high profile author that most people would certainly know his name, but I keep all of my clients confidential. And he has lead toxicity. And unless he comes out with it, I'm not going to say, you know, who it is, but they have a serious health condition because of lead that came from two sources that I won't say. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it caused high blood pressure in this person. And we didn't know. We kind of worked the process, but we finally figured out, oh, it's from these two sources. And so now, of course, we're doing a heavy metal detox. We're having him give blood to get rid of this lead. And he will get better, of course. But these are things that, again, they just build up over time. It wasn't one source of lead, or it wasn't, I should say, one exposure. Typically not, but it does build up over time.
Yeah, excellent. And so I know Nick really is curious about this. He's in the kitchen all day, you know, preparing food for people. But what are some like examples that you can share as far as things in the kitchen to look out for, like different cooking pans that have high chemicals? What examples could you use?
Yeah, so I did basically like a whole show. It's kind of a addendum. You know, the rain barrel effect is how we get well. That's the first half. How we get sick. That's the first half of the book. And the second half is how you get well again through the de-stress protocol, which is the diet, the exercise, the stress reduction, toxins, rest, emotional balance, supplements that are backed by science, and a success mindset, which allows you to persevere. So a big part of it, though, is the toxicity, and that's what we're talking about today, and almost nobody talks about it. But if you're cooking with aluminum pans, and most pans are aluminum because they heat up really quickly, they're pretty even distribution of heat, which is good for cooking. But the problem is we have an aluminum pan and typically aluminum spatula, and we're scraping the aluminum pan, and over time, we just get these microparticles of aluminum in our food. And what does that build up? Well, it builds up aluminum in our body. Well, aluminum affects our thyroid, it affects our hormones, it affects our nervous system, and it affects our brain. It's one of the causal factors for Alzheimer's. It's not the only factor. There's about 24, but it's certainly one of them. And like I said, it's just pervasive in the environment. So aluminum core pans are fine, but I'd much prefer people to, like over time, they can just do this. Your main cooking pan, most people have like one or two favorites. Switch those out first. You know, your main pot, your main pan. Go with the stainless steel if you like that. Go with the ceramic, or go with a glass, whatever you prefer. And a lot of people like to use cast iron. I think that's fine every once in a while. Certainly fine for women, menstruating women, because they're getting more iron in, but not necessarily great for men or other people that build up lead, because lead is not one that the human body can use, nor does it get rid of very easily. So I do use some cast iron. I'm not going to say that I don't. It's nice for cooking some things. I just don't know that I'd use it all the time. And if I were using it, I'd be careful not to scrape the pan as you're making some food as well.
Okay. Oh, that's helpful. Our family uses a lot of cast iron pans, so thank you so much. That was incredible. So one other thing too, you kind of alluded to it. I know. So I'm going to chat it in for our audience here, your website and all the resources that you have to help people with these things. But one thing that my wife and I discovered through you is an organization called the Environmental Working Group, where we can literally type in a lot of household products and it'll tell us what it is on the scale as far as toxicity or the chemicals that are in it. And so can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit, like as far as how you've discovered in your search about where to go to so you can find the answers about these things?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's two main ways to look at it. So we'll talk about EWG for a moment, ewg.org, the Environmental Working Group. They're a nonprofit. I mean, they're a great group. Obviously, I have nothing to do with them, but I do. So like for my book, The Rain Barrel Effect, 100% of profits go to charity. And that's one of the places that I donate to because they're doing remarkable work. It's like all of this is free for you. It's incredible. But they have two parts of the website. They have multiple parts, but one is just on skincare. And you can just type in EWG and you can type in Skin Deep and you'll go right to your skincare products. Very, very important for both men and women to use products that would be edible, that would be consumable. We have to remember that our skin is porous. And so you actually absorb in a lot of what you put on your skin. And I learned this in Ayurveda, actually, and Ayurvedic clinics around the world, because some people's digestion was so poor that actually we infused the oils with herbs, the same herbs that you would take internally, and we use them over the entire body. So it's basically a massage, but it's called a medicated, but it's not medicine. It's herbal-based medicine, but that's what they use in Ayurveda. And they would actually absorb about 2 to 3 teaspoons of this when placed over the whole body. So that was a great way to get herbs right into your bloodstream. So just make sure that you're using non-toxic skincare products. And then the same for the other products that you're using in life. And it's really as easy as, they have over 10,000 products over there. So you can just type in your product, see if it shows up. And then you'll over time, if you look at it for the different grades they give it, you'll see why. Oh, it contains sodium lauryl sulfate. Oh, it contains phthalates or parabens. And so then you'll start to be able to look for that on your labels to say, oh, does this contain that? And if it doesn't, well, then you're probably much better off, using that.
Yes. Excellent. Yeah. It's been an amazing resource. Like we're usually pretty good. So my wife loves to make homemade shampoos, homemade soaps and lotions. And so we were already down that path, but there are so many products in our household that we started typing in and we're like, oh man, I'm glad that we decided to rediscover this. So, first of all, thank you for bringing that to light for us. It's been amazing. And I would encourage anybody that listens to us to check that group out. One other thing too, we'd love to kind of squeeze in here while we have you is I was most fascinated about the sleep that you were talking about on the Cabral Concept podcast, which is a world-renowned podcast and it's excellent. I hope everybody on the audience checks it out. But you talk a lot about sleep, different body types, and age ranges. What I really loved in there, not only myself that I need to work on, but kids, like being mindful of when you put your kids to bed and the cycles around that. And so can you dive in a little bit around sleep habits, optimal for adults and then also optimal for children?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the easiest way to think about it is that when you have little kids, you have babies, you've got toddlers, they're sleeping 12 to 16 hours a day. They're sleeping obviously babies are sleeping the majority of the day, but too often we start to treat kids as almost like little adults and they're not. Their brains are developing, their nervous systems are developing, everything in their body is developing, and think of it as more recovery. So their body is breaking down a little bit during the day, but really so sleep is anabolic. We basically have 2 phases of our life, and one is catabolism. It's the breaking down, it's the entropy. It's what happens when we start to get maybe in our 50s, 60s, 70s. It's like slowly declining. But again, we can prevent that by doing things that are more anabolic during those ages. And when we're kids, which in Ayurveda is more of the kapha-based phase, we need to be more anabolic. And the more you sleep, then the more you grow. A lot of bodybuilders, they take naps during the day, they sleep more. Why? Well, their body's growing at the time, it's repairing. So, when you get to be teenagers, again, teenagers are suffering right now from a lack of sleep. And that's because they go to school, then they have sports, and then they have to do homework, and they're not getting to bed until 10, 11, 12 at night. And then they're back up at 6. and their bodies need 10 to 12 hours of sleep as teenagers. You know, my girls are 6 and 8 years old right now. They need between 10 and 12 hours of sleep every single night. And it might seem like a lot, but you know, it's not. And if you get your kids to bed at 7:30 or something like that, you'll see them naturally wake up about 10 to 12 hours later. And so some kids are different. My youngest daughter, she gets up after about 10 and a half hours to 11 hours. And my oldest daughter, a little bit more of the ectomorphic body type, she'll sleep a good 11 to 12 hours. And so there's obviously a little personalization to this, but for adults, there's really no personalization. It's 7 to 9 hours of sleep. People can get away with less than 7. I should say they try to get away with less than 7, but it will catch up with you over time. Like you can function on less than 7. I'm not saying that, but you can't be optimal. That's certainly been proven right now. And then more than 9 hours for too long. Like if you're sick, you have a cold, you have a virus, sure, sleep for 12 hours if you need to repair the body. But for, you know, the majority of the time, 7 to 9 hours every single day. And that's based on your activity output, and it's also based on your body as well. Bigger, more robust bodies typically need a little less sleep. They're a little bit more anabolic naturally. And then thinner body types, thinner frames, thinner joints, ectomorph, vata body type, typically need closer to the 9 hours.
Okay. Yeah, no, beautiful. And one thing I was slowly learning myself too is that it's kind of connected to the toxins, right? Because I believe when you sleep, your body actually gets rid of toxins. Am I correct in thinking that?
Well, your liver is filtering your blood all day long. So that's the nice thing. It's every 6 minutes, all the blood in your body is filtered through. So you're always getting it. However, when you are asleep, you're in what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is when the deep repair happens. So deeper levels of detoxification, slow metabolism of body fat. When you break down body fat, your body fat's 300 times more toxic than your blood. And that's because a lot of these toxins, if your liver doesn't get them, it stores them in your body fat. So if you're going through lipolysis, you're breaking down body fat, it's good to make sure your liver is fully functioning well. It's good to do a functional medicine detox. But no, for sure, your liver's ramped up, your kidneys are ramped up. And that's also why when you wake up in the morning, for that first half of the day, you need to be drinking lots of fluids, whether it be smoothies or lemon water, ginger tea, whatever it is, to make sure that you flush your system so that you get all of that out, because your body has been stagnant overnight and you need to flush out then all the acids. I mean, this is clinically proven as well. You can literally test your urine pH in the morning, and then you can test it at night. And it's always going to be more acidic in the morning, simply because your body breaks down metabolites into acids. We call that the organic acids test. And then those are mainly excreted in the morning. And then you go through the day, you break down, you do cellular cleanup mainly at night, and then all of that comes out. So lots of fluid in the morning is very, very important.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we've packed a lot of things in here, which I wanted to do, because even if we didn't get into the detail, there's so much resources out there on your website and in your book and all the other groups and nonprofits that you support that can help people on this journey. In the last few minutes here, can you share anything that you're working on today that the audience would love to learn about before we leave?
So right now, there's definitely a few more books that I would love to be able to write. But what I found is that a lot of people are, well, there's two main things that I'm really working on right now. And that is teaching. There's over 4,000 health practitioners at the Integrative Health Practitioner Institute, where I'm teaching them how to go through these protocols with people all over the world. Because my main practice is over at Equi.life, and we have all of our protocols, all the labs right there for at home. That's all open source. So people can literally just see exactly what we can do, or they can do for themselves. They can do it with someone else locally. They can do it with us, totally up to them. But we're open sourcing everything. That's our goal. So I'm hoping within the next 5 years, I have everything that I've ever done and that I'm working on completely open sourced, so that people can see what I'm doing. They can feel free to copy it if they want, but these are things that have been proven to work. So, but a lot of people really want to go deep on whatever their health ailment is. And so that's what I've been working on lately. And those are the health results accelerators. So it's basically like in half a day, 4 to 5 hours, everything that you could need to know about your gut, about female hormones, about toxicity, about your thyroid. And it just goes deep on it. It's like every single reason as to why your thyroid might have become imbalanced, or your hormones, or your gut. And then here are the main symptoms, here are the main causes, here's exactly what to do, and go. You know, so it's like,
Yes.
it's everything that people want, because you could spend a year reading 12 books and you'd be able to get a lot of this information. But it's like, this is what we do in clinical practice. Learn this in 4 to 5 hours, copy it, go to work. I mean, so that's what I think a lot of people are looking for now. And again, at this point in my career, I want to be able to share what works, and whatever people want, that's what I do.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know I've learned a lot, and I still continue to learn a lot from you. And you're actually one of our biggest fans in our family, and I really appreciate it, Dr. Cabral. So thank you so much for joining us today. I've chatted in your website, your book, and resources, as well as your podcast for people to check out, because I imagine that they come from all walks of life. Maybe they want to read, maybe they want to listen. I know you also do the Cabral Concept on YouTube, which is excellent as well. But thank you again for joining us today, and we hope that your accelerated program goes really well, and we look forward to engaging in that.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Really think that the work you're doing is outstanding as well. So looking forward to promoting your work as well. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cabral.
Well, that was an exceptional treat. I know Nick feels the same way. It's just Dr. Cabral is such a fan to our family. And as soon as I mentioned Dr. Cabral to Nick, he immediately went out, bought the book, and him and I couldn't wait to just dig in and learn more on this. And so, Nick, what are your reflections quickly before you go into the kitchen here?
Yeah, thank you, Troy, and thank you again. I know Dr. Cabral is no longer with us, but he is a very, very busy individual and has a lot of people to help out there in the world. And so, just really grateful that he, donated a half hour of his time to enlighten us and enlighten our community. Well, my biggest takeaway was. I think I better be a little bit more intermittent with my trustworthy cast iron pan was my first.
I think we both had an eye-opening moment there. I mean, I use a cast iron griddle that goes the whole length of the stove that I use to cook eggs on every morning, and then we have 2 other cast iron pans that we cook with routinely. So
yeah, here, yeah,
fascinating.
Yeah. So there's, I think it's it's just it's opportunity for, I think like what the biggest takeaway here is that like not to feel overwhelmed, and just like that. I'm just hoping that what Dr. Cabral shared with us is that it brings a new access point into understanding our bodies, our health, and our mind. One doesn't need to just tackle everything at once. And
yeah.
So, I think my biggest takeaway is just like, well, I'm in the kitchen a lot. So what are a couple things that I can change in the kitchen? Just with awareness of what Dr. Cabral shared. And then as I kind of continue to, move along in my journey of health and understanding and discovery, like, it sounded like sleep was interesting, or like the water filters. Like, it's how do we continue to layer things on rather than, I think, just like pull everything out and then try to reshape everything. That was my big takeaway. How about you, Troy? I know. Yeah.
I mean, the rain barrel effect, as Dr. Cabral talked about it too, is it's a matter of deduction, not just inputs, right? And so our bodies naturally collect all of these things, these toxins, these chemicals, and some of it we can't control. I think that's important to remember, is that sometimes we can't control the environments we live in, but we can be mindful of it and do our best to deduct them from our rain barrel, and so concept of it is that not only awareness will help you in your health, but also just think about all the things that you can minimize so that your health can thrive on its own, actually naturally do its thing. It can detoxify through the liver. It can detoxify through, brain and sleep patterns and everything. And so, and I love that he dove in a little bit with the kids, because that is so hard. Like, any parent that's going to watch this, including, myself, is that we feel like we're being fun when we let the kids stay up till like 9 or 10 or, and stuff. But really at the end of the day, they need that. They need that sleep more than anything. And so I'm glad that we had a chance to kind of bring that up and have him talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again for, I think I will share this and then we'll move into some cooking for today, inspired by Dr. Cabral. But I loved his distinction around, like, we always want to add more superfoods or add this into our regimen. And really, it's actually, we need to subtract before we can then add things, layer things back into our life. So I thought that was a huge take-home message for me, and I hope other people would also, listen to that and at least think about that. Nonetheless.
All right. Well, what awesomeness do you have for us in the kitchen today?
Well, if you can tell, I've got quite a show going on right here in my kitchen. So this is going to be a wild Ayurvedic bowl. So nice. I know Dr. Cabral talked about Ayurveda, and I don't have a huge working knowledge of Ayurveda, but obviously it's rooted in India, and there are certain types that we all are, and it doesn't necessarily mean like if I'm one component of this Ayurveda that is me all the time. I think what we're constantly seeking for is balance, right? And so I know for a fact that there is like hot and cold, right? So like during the winter, right? Like as we're coming out of, right? Like it's cold outside, we want to be eating warm foods, right? To kind of keep that balance. And now as like spring is emerging and summer is about to happen, we want to, like, as heat starts to happen, we're going to want to, our bodies even naturally want the colder substances, colder foods, colder drinks, that kind of thing. So that's my basic throwing out of, or my basic premise of Ayurveda. And today we're going to whip together something that kind of is a best of both worlds here. So we're going to have, cooked sweet potatoes, and then we're going to have some microgreens and arugula salad with a like a cilantro jalapeno vinaigrette. And then we're going to add a little egg on top and some like ancient grains to this thing. So it's going to be a very well-rounded bowl that kind of, I think, can kind of fit in both compartments of Ayurveda. So how this is going to work. All right. So we are going to start with, I'm really proud of this here. We've got a stainless steel pan here. So I'm not messing myself up here. All right. So first things first. So we're going to, we want to prepare the sweet potatoes. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to saute these in coconut oil, garlic, and then adding a little turmeric as we saute. Then we're going to throw some bone broth into the potatoes as a liquid to help soak into the potatoes and give us a few more nutrients along the way. So first thing we want to do is we want to peel that potato.
Now, question for you, Nick. Our family eats a lot of sweet potatoes, but I tend to cut them, leave the skin on, and then bake them with olive oil. Do you typically skin it every time?
I do not usually skin it every time. Great question. I would wash it, right? Scrub it with a brush over the sink, just to kind of make sure that you clear out any, just whatever could be on the outside, whether it's dust or whatever particles. That's just one of the things that I know, how it may factor into eliminating toxins. I'm sure it can kind of get rid of surface level stuff. It obviously cannot remove, you know, how the sweet potato was necessarily grown, that kind of thing. But we can do anything like we can wash and spray and scrub vegetables that would remove those types of toxins and particles on our foods. So
excellent. Yeah, I know Dr. Cabral kind of alluded to it a little bit when he was talking earlier in the show, which is the Dirty Dozen and how it changes, you know, every year, every other year, based on, you know, pesticides in the environment and where those foods are grown. And that's kind of what Nick's talking about right now.
Yes, and I think that you know, I think even from a you know, I know I've talked to a lot of people out there, and they're like, you know, even from a cost perspective, you know, Dr. Cabral's not saying we need to eat everything organic. There's resources available to help us understand like what are some of those things that aren't necessarily organic that we can eat that are on that not the Dirty Dozen list, but the Clean 15 list. So
yes.
I wonder if we can somehow share that with is there a link to his thing in that? Okay.
Yeah, we can. I'll make sure I queue that up for them as well, and probably for our listeners that are not in the farming industry. Just because it's not organic doesn't mean that it's not sustainably grown. And so what I mean by that is it can be quite expensive to some farms to go through the certification process, and so sometimes that's why they choose not to be certified organic. And so just want to let you know that it could still be grown in an environmental friendly method without the label of organic on it.
Yes, and if you're at that farmer's market, like have that conversation with the farmer. Like the farmer knows much better than I do. I know that much, right? Like the farmer's in it. He's working, his or her hands are in the ground. Like they know what's going into their product and into what they're growing better than I do. So they may even have a very good reason or emphasis as to why it is grown the way it is grown. So great point. All right, so I'm heating up my pan a little over medium heat. What I'm gonna wanna do is, as usually, like if you boil potatoes, you can just kind of usually have them and throw them in the pot, but I want these to take about 10 minutes, so I'm gonna try to keep them all within about a 1 inch or 2 inch cube. So what's gonna happen, I'm just gonna dice these up real quick, trying to keep that somewhat uniform. It doesn't have to be completely. So again, I'm always focusing when I'm cutting anything that that I'm cutting on a flat surface, just trying to move through this. All right, so now that they're all about the same size here, okay, very nice. I'm gonna add some coconut oil into my pan here. And we're going to go ahead and add those in. I'm going to let those saute for about a couple minutes. And then we're going to add our garlic and turmeric. And then we'll add our chicken broth at the end of that. So as those potatoes are cooking, one of the things that if you would do at that same point would probably go ahead and cook your quinoa or your brown rice, and that's an option here. Like you could double down on the greens here and just do sweet potato and greens. So there's numbers of different options you can do here. But we also want to get the dressing going. So as those potatoes are cooking, we're going to multitask. So what I'm going to do here is I've got a lemon jalapeno vinaigrette. So I've got a fresh jalapeno I'm going to cut. So I'm going to lob the top off, and then I'm going to break open the jalapeno, and I'm going to take a spoon and scrape the insides of the jalapeno out. I strongly recommend that you don't use your fingers and then go to the bathroom, because that can be a very peppery experience.
Yes.
You know what? So on your privates.
Yes, definitely. You want to clean your hands if you're handling jalapenos, for sure.
All right, so I'll put the jalapenos in. I'm going to turn around and stir up my. So with these sweet potatoes, real quick, I'm going to go ahead and add my garlic, a little bit of 2 cloves of garlic here, and then about 2 teaspoons of, and I'm just eyeballing turmeric, and I'm going to let that go. Keep going. And as that is going, I'm just looking for the garlic to kind of brown up just slightly, where that aromatic component of garlic, as soon as it hits the pan. And then what I'm going to do is add a couple cups of chicken broth into the potatoes, and I'm going to let them come to a boil and then simmer them down. And that's how we're going to cook the sweet potatoes down. So
yeah,
that turmeric and the turmeric and the chicken broth are going to infuse, all those nutrients are going to infuse into the sweet potatoes here. So let's complete the vinaigrette. Okay, so I'm going to take some cilantro, maybe about half a cup. I'm going to give it a rough chop. I'm going to transfer that into my blender bowl here. And when it comes to cilantro, you know, I know like cilantro comes, it's got a little bit of a woody stem to it, as you can kind of tell. When I emulsify things like with salsas or vinaigrettes that I use cilantro with, I'm not gonna take off all the cilantro. I'm just gonna use the stems and leaves together. But if I was going to like serve something and garnish, I'm gonna peel the leaves. So just a quick little note there. All right, so what we want with the vinaigrette is a nice balance of the fat, acid, salt, and sweet. So we're gonna use olive oil for the fat, lime juice for the acid. We're gonna add just a touch of honey for a little sweet, and then we're gonna add some salt. And then for me, I like to add a little S at the end. That's why I'm adding the jalapeno, so that I can get a little spice. Nice. So I'm also gonna add a little bit of garlic that I have left over, because why not? Because garlic's the best. I'm going to do about a half a cup of cilantro. I'm going to squirt a little bit of honey in. And then my salt over here. And then, so I've got my olive oil here, and what's going to happen here is I'm going to try to show everybody what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to snap the lid on. And then I'm going to slowly drizzle the olive oil in as the blender's going.
Wow. Nice. Is that why? So is that why most blenders also come with the removable cap on the middle, in the middle part of it?
That's right. Yes.
Okay. All right. I've always wondered that. We have one that has the middle opening there, and I never pull it off there, but that makes sense.
I think I need to add a little bit more oil. All right. So this is going to be kind of a chunky-ish type of dressing, right? I'm not looking for anything to, be emulsified. I can get it as emulsified as I want. But for me, what I want to do is this. I want it kind of a little chunky. Woo! I definitely got the spice down. That is for sure. Woo! All right. I need to add a touch more oil. Touch more honey. Okay. We're going to call that good. Let's do a taste check again. So what I'm looking for is, again, that fat, acid, salt, sweet, and a touch of spice.
Yes.
Yeah. And once I kind of feel like that's well balanced, so if I thought that this was too acidic, I'm going to add a little salt or add a little sweetness to it. If it's a little bit too spicy, I can add a little bit more oil to it. So there's always little things that we can do to kind of continue to try to find that balance for ourselves.
Yes.
But also know that we're going to be putting this on a dish, like on a plate, and so those flavors are going to meld with other flavors, right? Like the sweet potato is going to be sweet. So we want to be also mindful that we don't want to make this too sweet, and then it's going to be too sweet of a dish with like something like a sweet potato. So we have to have that awareness of what we're all working with. And then with the egg, we're going to have a little bit more fat to kind of drizzle down onto the dish as well. So, all right. So as you can kind of see with the sweet potatoes here, so they're kind of just boiling in a nice nice bath here. And then eventually what's going to happen is they're going to cook down so well that you're going to kind of have like a mush. And so what we want to do now is transfer these into a bowl, and we want to reserve some of that liquid. Some of that's going to boil down, but we want some of that liquid to also go into the mashed potato. So next thing, I'm going to give these like a mashed potato look. All right, we might want to do a little salt check here. Could use a touch of salt. All right, so now that the dressing is done, so just for the viewers at home, those potatoes did not get done that fast. These potatoes that are cooking right now will take roughly about 10 minutes. And what you're looking for is you'll take like a fork or a paring knife, and once it's like it just sort of goes straight into the potato, you'll know it's done. And then you can remove whatever excess liquid is still there. Again, remember to reserve some of it for when you go and mash these up, because you'll need a little bit of liquid to kind of help the process.
Okay.
So now what we want to do is start to get our egg ready. So I've got a skillet going. And then as that is going on, I'm going to pre-dress slightly so I have arugula and some sunflower microgreens that I'm going to mix together. And that's going to be part of our meal here, but just letting you know, you can use spinach, you can use any type of green, microgreen, anything that's kind of suiting your fancy. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting the bowl together. So I have a brown rice rainbow quinoa mixture. So I'll start there. And then I'm going to come next to those sweet potatoes. I'm just going to go that right there. And then I'm going to add my microgreens here. And then the final thing we want to do is what we're going to do. We're going to add that egg on top. So give me 1 second. So again, with the egg, when I put that down, so I'm going to crack it nice and easy. I'm going to hold it very close to the frying pan and gently peel it open. And then, whoop, don't move it too fast. So once I'll salt it. Where did I put my salt? There it is. All right. So once the egg is done, then we'll finish dressing it. And I guess the other thing one could do here too, Troy, is, and folks at home, is that if you wanted to add just a touch of protein, you could add like some smoked salmon. You could add some roast, like broiled cod or some chicken thighs, or, you know, you could add a flank steak or something. So this is really just a great base. It doesn't have to have meat. I suppose if you could do some kind of tofu as well and keep the egg away. But yes, there are a number of different things one can do.
While you're flipping that back there, I'm just curious, Nick, I know you use a lot of wood cutting boards there. And so do you have any tips for people on how to clean wood cutting boards?
Yes, so I do. So a couple things that when it comes to wood cutting boards is I think it's the best for your knife as far as like the health of the blade and everything, but it also requires a little bit more extra care. So
yes.
I don't know if this has ever happened to you, Troy, but like, let's say that I just got done like mincing garlic and then I throw something like an apple on there and I'm going to eat that apple fresh and I've got this like lingering garlic taste now infused on my apple and I'm like, oh man, right? So a lot of times what I do in the kitchen is I actually I try to mark which things are going to be aromatic and other things like fresh vegetables that are not going to carry over those aromatics. Now, if you do get an aromatic on your wood cutting board, you can do vinegar and baking soda to help and take a brush, and you might need to do it a few times, but that's going to help deodorize and neutralize that smell and that taste on the cutting board. And then as far as wood is concerned, you're going to want to treat it with like mineral oil every month or so.
Okay. No, that's helpful. A little funny story here while you bring that egg over here. Kellen, I don't know if it's because we fed him so many avocados when he was a baby, but he does not like avocados. And so what's funny is if we chop an avocado on the cutting board and it touches any other part of the veggies or anything we're chopping and he catches a small fragment, he'll give us a hard time. He'll be like, why did you put that avocado on my food? So.
All right, so my egg is done. This is probably an over easy egg here. So I'm going to put that right in the middle. And then I've got some pistachios that I'm going to dust on top. Because, again, what did I say last time when I'm making a bowl, Troy? Do you remember?
No.
I like textures. So it's really good to have textures, at least from my perspective, to have so the nuts are going to be really good in here. Again, you could also do sunflower seeds. You could do maybe maybe you want some kimchi on top or something, right? So there's a lot of different things that, folks at home can do with this. And then the final thing, if we wanted a little bit more dressing attached to it. So what we do is just add a little bit of extra dressing on top, and voila, you have the wild Ayurvedic Dr. Cabral bowl.
I like it, man. It looks amazing. That looks really good.
So, anyway, yes, I will post the recipe, and we can everyone can take it and try it at home. And I think this is a very fun, kid-friendly, right? Like to cut the potatoes, let them, cook the rice and the quinoa, let them do the potatoes. They would probably love to mash the potatoes up, that kind of thing. So the only thing that might need supervision would probably be your vinaigrette, your sauce that you take it on top. So
yes. Excellent. I love this. Yes, so much. All right. Thanks, buddy. That's an excellent dish. If you're just joining us and watching Nick, we hope you go back and check the beginning of today's episode with Dr. Stephen Cabral. He's the author of the Rain Barrel Effect, which is basically saying knowing your body and what environmental factors outside of your body or versus what you put in your body and how that impacts your rain barrel and what does it look like to deduct that and then lead a healthier life. And so we encourage you to go back, check out his conversation with us. We also talked about sleep, things in the kitchen, applications and resources that you can easily use to find out whether or not your household products have toxins or chemicals in them that are not good for your body. So we encourage you to check that out. And then inspired by Dr. Cabral, Nick made an awesome Ayurvedic wild bowl here, as always, with his awesomeness. So thank you, Nick. We will make sure to share that recipe with you. We have shared links to our channel. We'll share links on the podcast as well to Dr. Cabral's work and Nick's work as well. So thank you for joining us tonight. Nick, thank you as always. It's always
thank you, and thank you again to Dr. Cabral for joining us here.
Yes.
Thankful
and
Thursday.
We're grateful for all of you and our audience out there that continue to download the podcast and check out our channel. And we greatly appreciate your support. So thank you again, and we will see you next week.
Goodbye, folks.